Welcome to the Potion Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC.
So what are we going to chat about? Let me know when you're going to go live. It's so random. You like. I feel like you're going to like ask me real difficult questions.
No, not at all. Like, I think I'm up to. I think actually you'll be getting close to my 150th episode on the podcast in like a year and a half, and I've been doing it twice a week. During my time in Singapore, I missed a few episodes, but I've been doing twice a week. I opened 3 venues in 5 months, man.
Yes, but Singapore do that to you, dude.
Yeah, and so
non-stop.
I've been doing twice a week, but then with COVID, I've been doing an episode every day, Monday to Friday, for the last like 4 weeks. So
yeah,
live streams, phone interviews, the whole shebang. So,
yeah, that's pretty nuts.
So yeah, the thing is that being me, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep up the pace once everything goes back to normal, but I usually don't stop things once I start them, if that makes sense. Like, I know there's a ton of bartenders out there. I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, I know there's tons of bartenders out there right now doing cocktail tutorials and stuff like that on Instagram and Facebook to get out their creative juices. But the chances of those continuing after this is all over is so slim that...
Well, that's what happened with me. Like, I started doing the Dean Callan Show with the idea that I'd have like a bank of videos that I could use when I open my own venue and use them for training, really. And I figured, like, I won't worry about the content too much at the beginning because I just want to get comfortable in front of the camera, chatting, and like get to a point where it feels natural, you know? Because the first videos I did, I was like, today we're going to learn about how to open a beer. And I was like super nervous, even for me, that like I was still nervous. And normally I'm not a nervous person. But yeah, I think I'm going to continue doing this. Yes. Well, not this, but my version.
But how often do you get interviewed? Well, I'm gonna, you know what? Before we start, I'm gonna kick off. I'm gonna go live.
Okay. You don't like. It's okay that I'm standing behind a bar at 9 o'clock in the morning your time, right?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. People
just points out how far away I am on the other side of the world.
People will get used to it. Yeah, give me 2 seconds. Nope, I don't want to do that. Fuck off. I want to edit privacy and go public. Done. So yeah, like I kind of agree with you, like the podcast and everything. So now once I do this video, then I turn into audio for the actual audio podcast, and then the live stream goes on 2 Facebook platforms, Twitter and YouTube.
That's very cool, man. I'm this close to like trying to do the same thing and like cross stream, like, but like, you know, you're using Restream, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen Luma TV?
I haven't seen Luma TV, but
Luma TV is basically the same thing as Restream, but they found a way to make it so that it will stream direct to Instagram Live.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that one down.
I'm like, and it's cheaper. It's like $20 a month or something like that. And they don't have a watermark, and they just let you go to everyone. And I was like, well, now that they've got the Instagram thing, I'm going to let that sit for a little bit, because I'm not an Instagram person. I don't know why, but it just bugs me sometimes. I'm trying to upload videos, and it's like, your upload failed. And then I do the same exact thing again.
Yeah.
And it works. And I'm like, well, why did it not work last time? You know?
I know how that feels. So, let's go back to I always like to go back to the origin story, because the thing is that my demographic for the podcast is very, very odd, in the way that I have the exact same amount of followers in the like 18 to 25-year-old range as I do.
You're checking the demographics?
Yeah. And the exact same amount of demographic in the 35 to 50-year-old. So I have everything from bartenders starting out for the first time to owner operators.
Well, I'm in the second category, but I'm not an owner-operator unless you count the Dean Callan Show as something that you could own.
I would. Like, the freaking dude, the cabin and the Dean Callan Show is legendary.
I do own the cabin. The cabin is my. This is when you come to London. You are coming here. We'll sit down. We'll have some bare face. I've got bare face because you said it was good. I seen it and I was like, I need to have it. And you were like, it's legit. And I was like, sweet, I'm getting bare face. And that was it. I was sold. I got it.
Well, I'll bring you a bottle of the bare-faced Oaxacan as well.
What's that?
It is because of the Canadian whiskey rules.
Yeah.
A small amount of aged mezcal mixed in with it.
Is it Oaxacan good?
I haven't tried it for a while.
Oh,
It's different because it's smoky. It's Canadian smoky, but the
like
smoke is
bacon.
very different to what you would normally associate with whiskey.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, mezcal smoke's a different type of smoke. It's like it's not smoldering peat. It's fire pit.
Exactly.
Smoke. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll bring
forward to tasting that.
But yeah, like, dude, the cabin is better set up than most freaking bars.
Yeah. I mean, like the hard part is though, you stand in here, you have a few drinks, you got your friends here, everyone gets like inebriated, and then you have to pack down. You know, and it's like, do it tomorrow, and your brain knows that you're going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, you know. And
the next day, it's always worse than if you just did it the night before.
Exactly. But today, Dean is such a dick to tomorrow, Dean, every single time. Tomorrow, Dean. Today, Dean's always like, tomorrow, Dean can deal with it. He's great. He's a better version of me because he's got more experience being me, you know? Anyway.
So
you want the origin story? My origin story is dodgy, man.
Because I've actually got a good... I remember the exact moment when we first met, too.
Oh, no.
So I got a good story about that, too.
What happened?
You have to tell your origin story first, and then I can tell my Dean Callan origin story.
Okay, my origin story, this is a true story, right? You can look it up. So, St. Patrick's Day, my dad and my mum were having a house party. And my dad and my mum got so drunk that they went and like made the, love. And they were busy doing that. And there was a fire in their house. And they were above the fire, caused possibly by someone smoking indoors or something at their house party. And then they had to be rescued. This is Dundalk. It's a small town in Ireland. They had to be rescued by the fire police, whatever, like the fire. What are they called?
Brigade.
Firemen, right?
Yeah.
Fire brigade. And who were drunk because it was St. Patrick's Day. It's a small town. And the fire brigade had to put a ladder up to save my dad and my mum and one of their friends. And my dad had long hair at the time. And it was reported in the newspaper that 3 women were saved from the fire when actually dad was a guy with long hair. So he didn't live that down. And then 8.5 months later, I was born. So I was conceived at a house party where the party was so good that the house burnt down.
So when did you start bartending in Ireland?
No, I started bartending in Australia. Like, my parents moved to Ireland when I was 8.5, and then I lived there until I was 18. And when I was old enough, I got a job in a bar and then left. I did about 8 months in Australia on the Gold Coast. Melba's was my first bar.
Where on the Goldie?
I went down. Do you know Melba's in Surfers Paradise? I went there. So my idea was, like, you know what Brisbane's like, right? And you know what Brisbane was like in 1999.
Yes.
So the bars in Brisbane that you could go to were like nightclubs, and all they did was like bourbon and coke, rum and coke, scotch and dry. Bourbon and coke, rum and coke, scotch and dry. But when you went to the Goldie, there was like, actual cocktail bars, or at least that's what I thought. So I went to the Gold Coast, and I went into like a cattle call at Melba's, where they just interviewed anyone who might want to work there, and then they picked the attractive looking girls and gave them jobs. And the lady said to me, well, yeah, like I did a TAFE course, a diploma in workplace training and assessment, a hospitality like management course, and then 2 cocktail courses. And I did it all before I was 18. I did the 2 cocktail courses I needed to be 18, but before I went for a job. thinking I needed some sort of qualifications. And then they said to me, yeah, you know, we don't hire without experience. And I was like, well, how do I get experience if bars don't hire without experience? And they said, you start somewhere really low, and then you get to this level later in your career. Give it a couple of years. And I just said to her, I will work for free until I'm better than the worst bartender in your bar. And I worked for free for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, but all the guests were tipping me loads. They were like, "This guy's crazy. He's working for free?" And I was like, basically bar backing.
Yeah.
But I'd been a brickies laborer before that, so when the bartenders came into the bar with an ice bin and they'd slide it along the floor, and you could see the old ice bins had been slid on the floor so much that there were holes in them and bits of mud getting into the bottom of it, like. Yeah, horrible. And then they just have to replace these really expensive ice bins, and they'd slide it along the floor and then scoop ice into this one and then slide it along. And you can imagine in a busy bar, there was like 4 or 5 stations. I just put it over my shoulder and went, boop, boop, having been a brickies laborer. And they were like, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, I quite clearly can. do you want me to do it again? And yeah, and then obviously that got people talking. And I remembered all the cocktail specs, which was different to everyone else, apparently. But yeah, what was your origin story? How did we meet the first time?
Oh, see, now you're jumping ahead. Okay,
yeah,
so
I'm getting nervous.
I think it was like 04, 05. I think you would have been at the press club by now.
Okay.
And
yeah.
we were down at a little restaurant bistro in Newmarket. And it was like a collective, like one of the chefs or the bar manager there was like sort of a collective friend. And like everybody, and it was one of the only places that was small and intimate for bartenders to go on Sundays down in Newmarket. And
Newmarket, is that on the water next to like Michael's restaurant?
No. It's the other way, down towards like, if you're at Press Club, instead of turning left at Press Club and going downtown Brisbane, you turn right and go out towards like, there's lots of football field.
It was near the river, right?
Yeah, it's close.
What modern dining, was that it?
Oh, no, it wasn't what. It was okay. Much smaller. No, I think we did a couple of cocktail competitions at Watt back in the day too. But I remember the very first interaction that I had with Dean Callan. I think I'd just come back from Hayman Island, and we were sitting on this thing, and you started quizzing me on cocktail history.
Oh, I was that bad.
And you like started hardcore. Well, because especially 2002, 2003, like that was when cocktail books were starting to become actually good cocktail books, and like history notes were really starting to come out, like Wandridge and stuff. And you started quizzing me hard, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this dick?" Like, and I just bang back every single question you bring out, like every year.
But that's good, right?
Every person. But that's a weird thing because it's one of the most specific memories when we first met was that.
Yeah.
And then I think I picked up a few shifts at Press Club, and we worked together at Press Club a couple of times. And I
had terrible social skills back in the day. Like I was just super geeky about bartending and super excited about it, but it come off so bad.
I was too. Like I had the same mentality. Like I think you came to St. Arnaud a couple of times when I was working at St. Arnaud, and Raj and that came.
Yeah, man, that place was legit. You always had like nicer atmosphere in your bars. But especially the one down on the river, that was my favorite.
Yeah, that was a weird one because it was a brew pub that a bunch of us took over and we're like, we can make this a cocktail bar. Let's make this a cocktail bar.
It was cool though.
So that was my Dean Callan origin story. But when did you move up to Brisbane and get into serious bartending like Press Club and stuff like that?
It would have been like 04, 05 when you first met me. I went to the Gold Coast. I was there for a few months, and then I went back to Ireland. Like that's all I wanted to do because my dad kept telling me, everyone in my family from the age of 14 was like, "You're not going to be a bartender. You're not going to be a bartender." And I kept saying, "I'm going to be a bartender. Like that's what I want to do." So when I did become a bartender, my dad kept telling me that in Ireland, bartending is taken a lot more seriously. You have to do a 4-year apprenticeship and finish your trade before you're considered a bartender. You can't just walk in and be a bartender. And I was like, that sounds legit. You know, I'll work here until I've got enough money and then move to Ireland and start as an apprentice, right? So I did. I went back and lived with my granny for a few months in Dundalk. I got a bar job in Dundalk, and they would not let me do anything. When I first got a bar job, it was because my auntie had kind of put a word in for me at the Windsor. And these old men, dude, it was unbelievable. The old men, have you ever you've poured a pint of cider before, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can't mess up a pint of cider, right? A pint of cider, like it's literally like this is my Negroni tap, right?
Yeah.
Runs the same as cider. There you go, right? No head, no froth to it. It's just, you just turn the tap on and the stuff comes out. Yet these old men would not let me pour them a pint of cider. They'd sit there with an empty glass, waiting for Donald, the man, like, or one of the real bartenders, because they were like, this Aussie kid he can't pour. And it took me so long to gain their trust that when I finally gained their trust, it felt so good. So I started in the old man's pub, and then obviously me being like hungry for more work, I was only doing about 20 hours a week. I started working in a cocktail bar at nighttime. So I'd work in the old man's pub in the afternoon, and then it would close. I'd be like walking around being like, "You're right there, folks. Whenever you're ready, please. Have you got no homes to go to?" And they're all like annoying people till they leave, because they otherwise wouldn't leave. And I was really good at that. And then I'd go to Ridley's and work the late shift there and close at 5 a.m. And you know, it was basically like working at Press Club, the early shift, and then going to family afterwards. Yeah. And then there was another bar that opened called Bar 58X, which is one of the greatest evenings I've ever had, serving students, like a students' night. They did this thing called Free Till You Pee.
Oh, Jesus.
Right. Free Till You Pee. And it's so, imagine this. It's a tenner to get in. The drinks on student nights are usually like €2, whatever anyway. But you pay £10 to get in, €10 to get in, and there's a line out the door. And then basically the security watch the toilets, and as soon as someone, if you can't pee in the venue, you can't go outside. Like as soon as someone goes to the toilet, that's it, no more free drinks, and then you start paying. And one night I think someone was standing in the line for quite a while, and it was cold, and she didn't understand the rules, and she came in the door and beelined it for the toilet and went straight to the toilet. And all the staff and everyone, because it's short-staffed at that time, the first hour or two when they're doing the free 2P, they put less staff on, obviously, right? So the staff look busy, but you're still waiting for drinks. And everyone just watched this girl go straight to the toilet and pee. And that just broke the seal. And people were still in the line. So obviously they let that one go. But for a moment, it was touch and go. I thought I was predicting a riot, and it didn't happen. Great night. Anyway, started working at Bar 58X. It turned out Ridley's was owned by one family. It's a small town in Ireland. Ridley's was owned by one family. Bar 58X was owned by the brother of this family, who fell out with the oldest brother and started his own bar. They hate each other. And then the Windsor is the proper, legit old bar, but that's a different family who hate Ridley's. So the three of them all came to me individually and said, "I'll give you full-time hours if you don't work at the other ones." So I was like, this is my hometown. All my family live here. I am not picking sides. I was like, I just went to Dublin early with no money. So then I moved to Dublin and worked in Dublin for a few years. Wow. And Dublin was epic. It was the height of the Celtic Tiger. So I was earning like banker money working in bars in Dublin and serving like everyone from Formula One people to boxers to movie stars and stuff. It was pretty cool. Those were the days.
When did you make the transition to brand ambassador?
Brisbane. If you remember, I started working at Press Club, and at the time, well, just before I started working at Press Club, I was informed that if I'm going to get proper jobs and move up in the world of mixology, I have to start like doing bartending competitions and doing self-promotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like,
let's reiterate to everybody, this is before social media. Like,
yeah, this is before social media.
Yeah, when you self-promoted, it was I think a tad more aggressive than it is now, like posting a selfie or posting some pictures of nice cocktails on Instagram.
I was very aggressive at it. So I started a MySpace, you know, as you do. I can't delete the MySpace. So I started MySpace, and I started entering competitions, and I'll never forget the first competition was an 80s cocktail competition in Brisbane. And someone wanted us to do twists, take 80s cocktails and do twists. And everyone just made modern cocktails like with a blue hint to it. Like I'm pretty sure Jay Lambert made something in the region of a 20th century that was blue. But Jay Lambert was in it. You know, I think Matt Hewitt was in it because there was money behind it. It was like $700 or something, which at the time was a lot of money. And I got third, but only because I was the only one that actually made an 80s cocktail. I made a Midori Splice. Do you remember the Midori Splice?
Oh yeah.
But instead of it just being Malibu, Midori, pineapple, and cream, for the kids that don't know Midori Splice, I put fresh pineapple instead of the carton stuff, and I put ginger, lemongrass, and chili into it, and used a coconut cream. And it was coconut flavored cream, so I could whip it so it was thick enough because coconut cream doesn't whip. And the lady who was judging it was her bar. She thought it was awesome, and I got third because it tasted like shit. But she thought the concept was great. And my hands were like this. And then I started, I was just good at talking shit. So I was able to explain things better than other people. Jay always made better drinks, but I think my presentation got me some, never wins. I always come second or something. And then people thought I won in hindsight. Like Martin Lang had a conversation with me a while back, also old Brisbane crew. And, you know, he was like, you used to win everything. And I'm like, no, I didn't. People thought I did. Like 6 months after a comp, they thought I did because they only remembered my presentation, you know? So I got good at presenting. And then when I was the beverage and training director at Katarzyna Group, I kind of worked with Sven a little bit before that, but Sven Almaning hired me to work as a brand ambassador on Ciroc. And the reason he did that was because I think it helped that I'd been doing training sessions for the Diageo sales reps at the Diageo office, because their sales rep came in, and me being the beverage director at Katarzyna, and the real boss was off on maternity leave, Jackie. He had to come through me to get Ciroc sold into the bar, and he didn't know it was made from grapes.
Oh no!
Which didn't go down well. You know how much of a geek I was back then. I was like, this is what I said. I was like, see my back bar? I've got one vodka made from potato, one vodka made from whey protein, one from rye, one from barley, one from wheat. If you have your vodka, I don't know, has a base ingredient that's different to, I'm going all one of each base ingredient, you know, then we could talk. And he was like, oh, well, actually, it's made from like French wheat or whatever. And I was like, nah, you're out. See you later, bro. And then the next guy came in and said it was a multigrain. And I'm like, you're getting mixed up with like Grey Goose, because at the time, Sydney Frank had said that Grey Goose was a multigrain, I'm pretty sure. There was something else that was said it was a multigrain. And then their boss came in and said, why are you such a dick? And I was like, look, this is what happened. And he was like, well, you tell me what you know. And at the time, I was like, well, it's 95% Uni Blanc, 5% Mozac Blanc. It comes from the Gaillac region of France, but also the Charente region. And he was like, whoa, that's more than I know. How do you know this? And in those days, if you wanted to invest in Diageo, there was like, there was a group that gave you email updates on all the new products and everything that Diageo had. So I subscribed to that. I also subscribed to their legal ones, so that if Diageo registered a new trademark, you would find out about it. So you find out about Rangpur way before it was out again. Do you know what I mean?
Not geeky at all. Just a little the details.
Well, in those days, if someone's going to email you information as it's happening, then why would you opt out of that?
Yeah.
Like you don't really have that anymore. I think if there's the same. This is why I love you doing like 150 Zoom meetings with people to get bits of information that that wouldn't go into a magazine, you know, because it's the same stories circling all the time at the moment. There's only so many people that are interesting. That makes sense.
It's yeah, I think the thing with the post shift is that I think the big difference with doing audio and video is that it's rawer, and I like the raw, authentic nature of it all instead of it being polished and primed and edited for a magazine article. You know, dropping F-bombs and stuff like that is regular thing for me.
Well, yeah, I need to learn to stop doing that. I watched a thing on YouTube algorithms and how YouTube works, and if they kind of scan your audio in the same way that you kind of have copyrighted material, and if they keep hearing swear words, they just put you down the list.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh, really? And apparently there's some words that you can say or people's names that will just get you struck off. I was like, wow, maybe the person's a crazy person, but I'm just going to stop swearing as much as I do. But then, yeah, so I started working with Sven. He hired me on Ciroc to begin with, partly because I'd been so aggressive in my knowledge of Ciroc with the sales guys. And then I started training the sales guys, so they already knew me. And partly because I won a Ciroc competition where the prize was a car.
What?
Yeah, man. The prize in this competition was literally a car. They offered a car in the competition. And you remember what Brisbane was like, right? So it was like super competitive. Everyone was in it. All the big names. There was the Jay Lambert. I think Perry Scott might have even entered in this competition.
Oh, wow.
Everyone, yeah, man. Like everyone. Martin Lang was in it. There was a whole bunch of people in it. And we got in it. We started doing the comp. And there's two normal people and then a sommelier. And the sommelier in the Ciroc competition started arguing with my knowledge. I called the drink like the Grape Escape and built the drink off the bottle. So on the bottle, there's grapes. And on the bottle, there's a blue, like there used to be, I don't know if it still is, there was a blue like stone. And that was meant to represent the Gaillac region of France was the first region where any artist had created blue paint, which is relatively modern, right? So they're famous for this blue paint. And I put blueberries in, and I what was it? It was, I put blue, there was this shitty blue liqueur. It was like a passion fruit liqueur that rappers drank in the US.
Alizé.
No, was it? No, it's not Alizé. It was like Hypnotic.
Hypnotic.
I put Hypnotic in it. It was so bad. I put blue shit in it. I put Ciroc in it, and I muddled grapes. I muddled blueberries, and then as the sweetener, I put Canadian ice wine because the grapes are late harvest, frozen on the vines that go into the Gaillac part of Ciroc. And then I put verjuice in it as an acid to balance out all the sweet crap I'd put in there. So it tasted all right, but this guy who was a judge started to argue that it can't be distilled from grapes because you need starch to distill. So it must have a grain in there. What's the grain, Mr. Smart Alec? And I was like, you can distill from grapes.
It's called cognac.
You make wine and then you distill it. It's an eau de vie. Like, you're a sommelier. Eau de vie, cognac, brandy, like brandy. And like he started being like, wow, no, you can't make vodka, blah, blah, blah. And I got to a point where I just snapped and then was like, you're nothing. You don't belong as a judge. Screw you, buddy. Get out of here. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't come and judge a competition. You're a disgrace. Go back to your sommelier. Take your little wine glass and go off out of here. And then Jay Lambert and everyone backed me up. You can imagine Martin Lang being like, hey, this guy's shit. Why is he a judge? So what they did was they disregarded his judging. And then they took the other two judges who obviously sat there watching me berate this other judge. Thought, this guy's going to clearly lose. We might as well score him high for entertainment value because other judge wasn't going to give me anything. And then I won. Didn't get a car because the Diageo guys were like, we never promised a car. But then I got a brand ambassador job instead. So from 2006, I was a brand ambassador for Diageo, traveled all around Australia. I slowly picked up all the other brands until I was kind of cross-portfolio. And then when I moved to China, after a few months in China, I got a brand ambassador job again. I kept getting offered brand ambassador jobs, basically. I'm good at going out drinking and socializing with people and then talking about brands. I still love all the brands that I've represented. So
how long before you became the Monkey Shoulder brand ambassador? Because I would say that was your biggest brand ambassador gig.
Yeah. By far, yeah. So I did brand ambassador for like cross portfolio for Diageo Reserve in Australia. It wasn't called Reserve in those days. And then went to China, and I started with 42 Below, which, like, if you remember Brisbane, 42 Below in those days was like 42 Below was my favorite brand. Yeah. Like, I loved what they did. And what we did with Monkey Shoulder was very kind of in tune with what 42 Below had laid down. They focused on bartenders. They took care of the bartender trade. The bartender trade then in turn took care of them. You know, all their brand ambassadors were ex-bartenders, so they talked the same language as we did.
Yeah.
Went to China, got a job with 42 Below. The amount of money I asked for meant that Grey Goose had to step in. I just asked for so much money. I didn't even realize that the amount of money I was asking for was after tax. Like, I was like, I don't know how much China taxes. It could be like 50%. I'm just going to ask for 40,000 RMB, which is like 4,000 pounds a month. And the HR guy was like, that's a lot of money. And I was like, you want to be successful or you want to hire someone else? I'm worth it, you know? And I walked out. I'm like, I'm not getting that job. I'm going to go back and bartend in Zapatas. And then I got the job. So I was earning way more money than I usually would. So I bought loads more gadgets with that money. Worked as brand ambassador for Bacardi portfolio for about a year and a half in China. When I went to London, my dream was to work in a famous bar, because as much as Press Club was amazing, and in Brisbane it was really well known, you leave Brisbane, no one knows anywhere, right? So I realized I wanted to be able to say to someone, I worked at Milk and Honey, or I worked next to this person, you know, someone knowledgeable. I'd never really worked under like a powerful leading figure in the bar industry and just seen how it all works. I'd always stumbled into something and then ran my mouth too much, and then people knew who I was, if that makes sense.
Well, I think back in those days as well, like I agree with you. Like back in those days, especially in Brisbane, like we were all sort of learning as we went. Like we were sort of coming through the ranks at the same time. There was no old guys for us to like.
There was kind of Perry Scott and Graham Grimshaw. Do you remember Graham Grimshaw?
Oh yeah, Grimmy. I can love Grimmy.
Mate, I ran into Grimshaw in Singapore last time I was there. What are the chances? Yeah, he looks so old.
I missed you.
He looks so old.
He does. I missed you guys by like 2 weeks, I think.
It would have been good to have all three of us catch up. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, but back in those days, like before the internet and stuff, like you were literally buying cocktail books at every time you walked down Queen Street Mall. You'd stop in at the frickin' every bookstore and pick up something brand new, and you were basically teaching yourself as you went.
Yeah, I started to feel guilty. There was one time I felt guilty that I had more access to more books because I'd earned more money than the other people that I was like chatting with. And I wanted to like cross-reference, like the knowledge I just got, I wanted to like vent it out. It's my nature. But the only way to vent it out was to chat about it. Like when we first met, and like quiz people, like, what do you think of this? And what do you know of that? Like, but then when I realized that other people weren't buying books and sitting down and reading them, I felt kind of guilty. They didn't have the same access. So I love that the internet has made it a lot more approachable, I guess. Like you don't have to have the money to buy the books and space to place the books.
Yeah,
like
500 books still in storage in Australia that I know we'll never bring to Canada.
Yeah, I've got loads of books in storage. I'm now moving booze out of the cabin so I can bring the books back, because I realize there's only so much booze I can drink, and all the collector booze I can just put in storage, but the books I need for reference. So yeah, that was that.
You moved to London, and who'd you work under?
I went to work at Milk and Honey. I wanted to work under Joe Wood, who I watched him bartend at Mahiki, and he was just so nice. All his drinks tasted amazing, which was something I needed to learn. I needed to learn to build rounds of cocktails better, which Milk and Honey, without a shadow of a doubt, was like the best place. I've got to go on for that. Like you had to put you had to put all the drinks out at the same time. You had someone standing there staring at you. That this is not in my nature, you know, like for someone to stand there and go, wrong, throw it out. Like coming from Press Club in Brisbane, we had 0.02%, you know, variance on across our, everything was rung in perfectly. We didn't like to waste anything. You know what I mean? It was like, I'd rather sell it for half price to a bogan because it didn't taste right than throw it out. Like,
that's
you
a
don't
t-shirt
waste,
right there. That's a
you know,
t-shirt
sell
right
it for
there.
half
Sell
price to a
price to
bogan.
a bogan.
Yeah, has to be a flannel t-shirt as well with like little rips on it. But yeah, it was a learning experience for me going to Milk and Honey. I'll tell you what, I got the best drink order I've ever had in my life at Milk and Honey. I was working on a different floor. I think I was upstairs in the red room or downstairs in the basement or something like that. And Nico De Soto, you know Nico De Soto,
Yeah.
obviously, right? Nico De Soto came into Milk and Honey. Would have been like 2009. With a couple of friends. Now Joseph and the other guys, like I'm pretty sure Arnold was there. They were all really good bartenders in Paris. But because in Paris, there was only like the expensive hotels and stuff, they'd heard that Milk and Honey was the place to go get classics, right? So they traveled over to London. They went to Milk and Honey and they ordered the classics that they would have felt guilty ordering in Paris from their friends. So Nico De Soto, in one order that had to all come out at the same time, ordered, right? Greatest order I've ever got in my life. A Ramos Gin Fizz, a Tom and Jerry, a Blue Blazer, and the Business, which is basically a bee's knees, right? Which I was grateful for. But those other three drinks, man, they're not supposed to go in the same order. Like a Blue Blazer with a Ramos Gin Fizz. How do you construct that order so it all works? I managed it. And like, it went out and he came back over and said that was the best Tom and Jerry I've ever had. And I thought to myself, have you ever had a Tom and Jerry? Because I had to do it cold. I couldn't do it hot.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of like, because we didn't have the batter, I had to kind of like wing it a little bit. And it took a while.
Wasn't on the menu. The Tom and Jerry wasn't on the menu.
No, none of it was on the menu.
Serious?
The Ramos Gin Fizz, the Blue Blazer was not on the menu. The Ramos Gin Fizz was not on the menu. And the Tom and Jerry was not on the menu. There were three non-menu drinks.
How do you do a Tom and Jerry a la minute?
Yeah, man. Well, I just basically made a like an egg noggy type batter, put a little bit of cream in it, and then put spices in it to make it taste like a batter. I just like randomized a batter to make it taste like what a Tom and Jerry batter would taste like. Because luckily for me, when I was in China, there were no classic cocktails. Like there was not when we first got there. We found a few gems. There was a bar called Bar Constellation, where there was a classically trained bartender who trained in Japan, but I didn't find that straight away. And they did do classics, but it was like Manhattan old-fashioned. You couldn't go in there and ask for a Ramos Gin Fizz or anything like that. So Lee Linford, do you know Lee Linford?
Yeah.
Lee Linford moved to China with me, and he opened a place called Tower 57 and started doing nothing but classics. But Lee Linford, myself, and a guy called Chris, I had like maybe 60 vintage books, like loads of vintage, like 60 books or so, 35 odd vintage books. I had all the reprints that I could get my hands on, and I had scans of like old books that I couldn't get my hands on. And what we did was we took the classic from every single book, and then they would just sit and I had my Bacardi credit card, and they would just make this version of a Tom Collins, and then that version of a Collins, and that version, and we'd try all of them, and then decide which ones we like, and find an amalgamation of them all and make a spec for it. And I just kept buying all those drinks for people in the room as long as they used Bacardi products. And we ended up making the bar busy. But we tried so many classics. It was amazing. It was actually a really nice time. Imagine you just sitting in a bar, there's two of your mates, and you're the only ones really drinking in there. But you're allowed to sit there all night and try classic recipes out of books. It was pretty cool. So I had the flavor in my mind quite a bit because I'd made Tom and Jerry's over and over again, trying to get the batter right. So I had the flavor in my mind and just recreate it as best as I could from that. But yeah, so worked at Milk and Honey, went to Kanaloa because I didn't know anything about tiki. I was just trying to focus on my weaknesses and build a more rounded set of skills before I found the bar that I wanted to work in. I thought I'd end up working somewhere when somewhere new opened. I was going to try to go in as a junior bartender somewhere like Clou Calais style. Clou Calais was already open, but another version of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't at the time. Milk and Honey was great, but it wasn't really my style of bar. They didn't want you to talk to the guests. And as you can imagine, that's my only skill.
Like being quiet for 3 hours.
Yeah. I would stand behind the bar at Milk and Honey, and the guests would come and sit up at the bar and have a chat to me. And I got in trouble for it because that's not what we were supposed to be doing. So it didn't quite work out. And I got faster and I got better at structuring drinks. But then when I went to Kanaloa, we did studied tiki and the fine art of putting up with horrible banker people. And when I was at Kanaloa, I got the job offer from the previous global brand ambassador for Monkey Shoulder to come work with Monkey Shoulder. I had, when I first arrived into London, bartended at what they called the Monkey Shoulder Treehouse, which was a treehouse, funnily enough, about exactly the same size as the cabin, with literally a bar top, like the same size as this, maybe a bit smaller. This piece of wood is the seat that was sitting outside the treehouse, and people sat on this bit right here, thumbs right there. It was a raw piece of pine that they cut, and they put 2 logs under it, and it sat like this. And then these pieces as well, they're from that bar. People would sit on these as seats outside. There was a similar bar like this, but it had whiskey barrel staves on the front. And they said, who wants to go first? There was only one bartender that could fit behind the bar, but obviously it's a festival that's open for like 14, 16 hours a day. So the idea was we'd do 2-hour shifts and rotate. I did the first shift, and it was early in the morning, but every time someone come in, I was like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Monkey Shoulder Treehouse. Let me tantalize your taste buds with a delicious Monkey Shoulder cocktail. Have you ever heard of Monkey Shoulder? It's a triple malt whiskey, the first in the world. And just talking shit. Like, I've only got to do 2 hours. I can be annoying and repeat the word Monkey Shoulder over and over again. The guys didn't know I'd been a brand ambassador multiple times. So I knew what the brand needed from that experience. They needed people to remember that they had Monkey Shoulder and it was a good time. So Jamie Forbes, the previous brand ambassador, said, like, dude, you're perfect for Monkey Shoulder. Stay on the bar. Don't leave. So I did 3, I think they were 16-hour shifts back to back. No joke, my wrists, because I started picking up 2 4.5-liter Gorilla bottles and being like, "Wah!" It was wild. But my wrist after that was like, oh, I had to pour this way. Because I just couldn't accommodate an actual cut. It was pretty intense. So after that, I kept getting invited to Monkey Shoulder events. And then when he left, he called me and said, do you want a brand ambassador job? And I said no straight away because I didn't want to be a brand ambassador ever again. Because it got to me being a brand ambassador. You don't have the control of the brand, but you have more passion for it than anyone else. So you love something. It's like loving a car and watching it roll down a hill into a tree, and there's nothing you can do about it if you're on a brand and you don't like the direction it's going. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I didn't want that to happen to me again. And in China, that wasn't necessarily happening with Bacardi, but there were some brand managers that would just forcing me to work events that I didn't need to work at, that weren't doing the right thing, if that makes sense. So it kind of got to me a little bit. But I said no. He said it's Monkey Shoulder. I thought, I like Monkey Shoulder quite a bit. And the Kanaloa thing wasn't the right fit for me. I thought I could do brand ambassadorship for a little while. I had a girlfriend that I really fancied, and I wanted to have a legit job for a bit. So I tried it out, and then it was a really nice fit. They gave me free reign for a while. So basically my boss resigned the day I started.
Because you started?
What's that?
Because you started?
It wasn't, he'd already resigned. So his name was Chris Rigby. No joke. We were supposed to, on my contract, it said that I'm supposed to start work at, I think it's 8:30 or 9 in the morning, right? And he says, Dean, don't, I wouldn't worry about coming in at 9. Come in around 10 or 11, you know, like we'll have a catch up to start. And I'm like, this guy trying to trap me into being a bad brand ambassador day one. So I turned up at 9 o'clock in the morning and just sat waiting to talk to someone. I didn't know where my desk was. And when he finally catches up with me, he's like, oh, you know, I did say 10 or 11. He had meetings, right? So it was a lot more relaxed than the previous China job I had, where they shouted at me if I wasn't there at 8:30 in the morning, even if I'd been up all night the night before. At first, anyway. Later on, they got used to me. But he sat me down. He said, oh, Dean, I'm going to have to be honest with you. I've resigned. And I was like, and at the time, there was the global brand director, the global brand manager, and the global brand ambassador. That was it. And Jamie Forbes had brought me to Paris because we were launching into Paris, but we hadn't really hit the ground in Paris. Like we hadn't really hit the ground in France. We were only in the UK. The only reason I was hired as a global brand ambassador was because Jamie Forbes was smart enough to argue that he wants to start the brand with one global brand ambassador who, as they launch into new markets, can launch the brand in those markets and grow the markets without like, so that they'd always have a brand ambassador. And then when the market was big enough to have its own brand ambassador, then they would bring one in, which was genius. I think this was one of the strongest things Monkey Shoulder ever did. And it was by accident. Do you want to know why? Because the UK team don't get a car, but the global team got a company car. And Jamie Forbes wanted a company car. That was the whole reason. So I got a company car when I started. I went from having no money, like living off like the scraps that I was actually given of the trunk I was meant to get. Trunk is your tips, service charge, to having a consistent income and a company car and a company card. And when they got it, there was a while that Chris was there. And then when he left, there was like a vacuum. And also the brand manager resigned as well. And then I got a new boss. And she sat me down. The very first question she asked me was, how does it feel to have gone from the top of the bar industry to the bottom of the brand ambassador world?
Oh,
I know, wow. Right? Which makes the angry kid, the passionate, angry kid in me want to be like, bottom of the brand ambassador world? Have you ever heard of Malibu? Like, I wanted to be like, this is not a bad brand. But then I was like, we went from having this guy who loved Monkey Shoulder and nurtured it to someone who just didn't even see it as a product. Then I found out later, I was told by multiple people within the company that Monkey Shoulder had been shelved and that they were going to deplete the stock, and then that was it.
And so what did you do? Like, what did you do then? Because it's...
I sat down with my boss and said, what are we doing? I finished all the events that Jamie Forbes had lined up. And I mean, I'm not joking, dude. The brand, I had to wear a white shirt with like my hair cut. They wanted macho sexual was the design, the look they were going for. That's what they kept saying to me. And I'm like, macho sexual? What the shit is macho sexual? So the only colors that they had in the brand scheme were beige, a gray color, and brown, right? Beige and brown are literally shit. And gray is neutral, right? So I kept wearing gray shirts all the time and jeans. If you look back in the day, they wanted me to have the new brand manager, not Julie Page, but a different person, advised me that I should be wearing a suit so I could be taken more seriously. So I changed my profile to me wearing a suit and then photoshopped some monkeys doing my hair. So I'm technically wearing a suit, but I got to be a bit cheeky because I wanted to take it in that 42 below direction, and they didn't want to do that. But Julie Page sat me down and she said the horrible thing about being, bottom of the industry. And I was like, well, everything's a challenge. I love a challenge. Like, I hope one day that Monkey Shoulder will be not at the bottom of the brand ambassador world. That hopefully I'll be more to the top end of the brand ambassador world. And that just shows how much I've got to climb that you've said that. But what I did say to her, she told me we're not doing any new events, so don't try to plan anything in. There's no A&P spend. We're freezing A&P spend for a while. She didn't say it in those words, so I said, well, can you transfer whatever A&P is unspent into my T&E so I can spend it? Because I can't raise a PO. And she was like, oh, you've done this before. To which I responded like, yeah, I used to be a brand ambassador, because she didn't look at my CV or anything.
Oh.
Yeah. So having been the brand ambassador for Bacardi, like in China, then Greater China, I did Asia Pacific for a while, and all over Australia for Diageo. I knew what a brand ambassador was. But she just thought I was like some dude that they hired in off the street, because Xavier Padovani told her, I don't know anyone. No one knows me. But it was a different circle of friends to Xavier Padovani's friends. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I go out to every bar that has Monkey Shoulder dusty in the corner shelves with my shiny new corporate expense account. And she told me she's going to let me go out and buy people drinks until the cows come home. As long as I don't spend over a certain amount, I run it through with her on a regular and let her know what I'm up to. She would just kind of approve me going out drinking because I wasn't able to do any events. So I went out and drank so much Monkey Shoulder that the decline stagnated a little bit. And when you go into a bar, and that horrible geeky bullshit that I was doing when I was younger came back to work. I went into bars and I sat at the corner of the bar and I didn't try to sell them anything. I just sat there and ordered a drink and had a nice chat to them. But I ordered a classic whiskey drink. So I would order a Mamie Taylor. And in 10 years ago, if you walked into a bar and ordered a Mamie Taylor, they were like, a what? And I was like, basically, it's like a Moscow Mule, but with Scotch whiskey. And they're like, oh, right, okay, cool, man. Like, why didn't you just say, can I get a Scotch whiskey Moscow Mule? And I'm like, well, the Mamie Taylor predates the Moscow Mule by about 40 years. So you'd be saying, can I get a vodka Mamie Taylor, really? You know what I mean? And they're like, what? And then I'd tell them about the Mamie Taylor, and then I'd be like, it's like the Old Pal and like the Negroni, like the first reference that I knew of in those days was like, they said it was invented in 1919, but I could invent a drink. I could make a drink today and say I invented it 20 years ago. You know what I mean? The first written reference like is the Boulevardier, and they're like, what? And then I tell them about the Boulevardier. So I'm getting them to make Morning Glory Fizzes, Boulevardiers, like drinks that they hadn't heard of. They knew Negroni, but they didn't know Boulevardier in all these bars because no one ordered Boulevardiers. And no one ordered any Morning Glory Fizzes. But a Morning Glory Fizz well made is delicious. So suddenly now they're getting extra Scotch whiskey repertoire. I'm buying all these drinks and then tipping them well. And then I'll have a chat with anyone else who's a bartender in the room and buy those bartenders drinks. And then I go, who wants to go to like Artesian? And they'll be like, what? And I'll be like, man, I got a corporate expense spent. Let's go to Artesian and have some drinks. And then I take all the bartenders from the room and go to Artesian for some drinks and go to Kalu Calais at the end of the night. And I just took bartenders out drinking. And when you get used to grabbing that bottle and making a drink with it and putting it back and grabbing the bottle and making a drink with it, you start actually using it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like a ground up way of doing things. And I also went into the biggest thing I think I did was I went into the phones of everyone in the company. So William Grant & Sons global office has 4 floors or had 4 floors and, 100 odd staff, right? Every staff has a phone right next to their computer that has a screen on it with either the William Grant & Sons signature logo, the Glenfiddich bottle, the Hendrix bottle, depending on which brand you are, But you can go in, there's a lot of steps, but you can go in and hack the phone and change the screensaver. So I changed everyone in the buildings, even the big boss at nighttime when no one was in. I stayed in late and went around changing everyone's phones. So everyone's seen Monkey Shoulder on their phones. And then I made a video with Monkey Shoulder branding all over it and loaded it up into the TV in the foyer of the office, the global office. So one minute they're saying Monkey Shoulder's not doing anything, we're probably going to get rid of it. The next, everyone's seeing on their lunch break, Monkey Shoulder, Monkey Shoulder, Monkey Shoulder. It's on all their phones. I kept swapping all the bottles behind the receptionist for Monkey Shoulder bottles. The awards that Monkey Shoulder won, I swapped one of the Glenfiddich awards for a Monkey Shoulder award. And then the girls at the desk had to find out, where did the Glenfiddich award go? And why is the Monkey Shoulder award in there? And I'm like, well, how come Monkey Shoulder never gets any love? So that, I called it internal engagement. I got in trouble for it. But what happened is that you had this mind shift Monkey wasn't doing that bad. It's just no one in the office had seen it do anything. So suddenly you had this shift. Sorry, my phone is on silent, but the computers aren't.
It's okay.
So you had this like complete shift of the mentality of the people in the office when they started seeing Monkey Shoulder do well, or they seen stuff happening. The mindset shifted, and suddenly there was a lot. It was a lot easier to get events happening. If you're friends with all the people in the office, then it's a lot easier for them to support you in an event that you're looking to do. So we started actually doing events, and we started doing bartender related stuff because it was easier than the consumer stuff we were doing. When I first started, we paid like 20 grand to FHM or GQ magazine to do an event with them, to partner with them to do an event. And they invited their database, which were horrible people. Everyone kept telling me, the people from GQ kept coming over and go, those guys over there, okay, give them a drink or two, but don't keep giving them drinks. They're freeloaders. They keep turning up to all our events. And I'm like, why? What? And this kept happening. And I'm like, so none of these people are influencers at all. And the events were actually like how they were aimed at lawyers and bankers. And the event, the one that I'm talking about, was getting a professional poker player to teach lawyers and bankers how to keep a straight face when they're ripping someone off.
Oh, Jesus.
How is that going to help
grand.
align your brand with a positive Who wants to learn that? And who wants to give free drinks to the animals that want to learn that? Like, it was just so negative. And I was there, I was like in both horror and in awe of the event. Like, I was like, this is just the worst. But at the same time, like, I can't, like, it's such a slick production. It's like these people they're really talented at putting an event on, but they have no concept of what makes a great event. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was no atmosphere. Like, on paper, in a photo, it looks slick, but it was just, you didn't want to be there. So it's a long story. But in those days, there were a couple of times when at like 2:30 in the morning, I was unloading equipment out of a hired van in a storage facility that was like cheaper, so we could afford it, in the middle of nowhere, miles away from, like 45 minutes, an hour's drive from my house. And because it's so late at night, the storage facility has these lights on timers. And yeah, so get this, every light was on timer. So if I'm in there and I'm loading the boxes to here, the light goes out, and it only goes on when you walk out of the storage box you're in, and then it triggers outside and lights the storage box you're in. But it only triggers the light directly above you in that hall. So you see this hall, and either side it goes all the way down, and it's just doors either side, like a hallway that fades to complete black on either side. And it was the first time I've ever thought to myself, I'm in a horror film. I'm in a horror film. If someone was watching the CCTV right now, they'd be like, run away, dude, run away. Why are you just standing there loading more boxes? And at the same time, I was like, why am I doing this? Like, is the brand actually is it going to survive? And then now looking back on it, I'm like, I loved that. I love the moments that made up.
What was the turning point for you with Monkey Shoulder? Because from the outside looking in, you got a ton of leeway. Like, some of the marketing ideas and stuff that you did, your wife's looking at you going, you have to put your baby to bed, isn't she?
No. She was calling me, but I think she realized that she forgot that I was on a call. And I put him with his grandma, so he's safe.
So what was the turning point? Because, like, from the outside looking in, you got a ton of leeway. Like, some of the marketing shit you did, like your freaking your mini bottle pipe and your cabinet.
Where is that? It's usually right here.
Your shaker, like, there was just so much stuff you got to do. Was this sort of like you saw the grassroots and you built it, and they were like, okay, Dean, you obviously know your shit, so there you go.
It was partly that. It was also 9 months without a brand manager means like the Tom Wade, the previous brand manager, was kind of helping from the UK, doing like the back of house stuff that I didn't know how to do. But it meant that I had a discretionary budget. And when I have a discretionary budget, if you're an ex-bartender and you spend $2,500 on a video, like, did you ever see the ice spoon video?
Yeah.
Like where they're all opening the ice spoons. The theory of the ice spoon video was, all I asked people was talk about stirring, but replace the word spoon, stirring with stir with spoon. So when you shake, you pick up a shaker and you shake it, right? You pick up a strainer and you strain with it. But for some reason, you pick up a spoon and you don't spoon with it, you stir with it, right? We don't call this a cocktail stir. We still call it a spoon because it has a spoon end. But is it a spoon, right? So I was like, that was my theory. But actually, what I wanted to do was show them that by looking at who are the talented people that aren't at the moment getting the attention that they should be getting. They're all very good at what they do. They're all about to become like either locally or globally recognized. Put them all on tape together. And 10 years later, when you look back at that video, the nostalgia will be like amazing. It'll be great to see all these awesome people young, right? So it was designed, if you look at it, the lighting, the softness of it, the cuddle at the end, it was all designed for a nostalgia piece. Because we didn't know if there was part of me that still thought Monkey could at any moment be on the back foot again. And it still kind of was. And also the spoon thing, all I wanted to do with the spoon was we had a problem with the salespeople. Now, if you're a salesperson and you have 1,000 accounts, right? And you probably know yourself, it's different in the US. I don't know what it's like in Canada, because Canada, you've got the whole country's like the government. But in the UK, William Grant's had their own route to market. They had their own salespeople. Those salespeople have so many accounts that they have to visit. It's insane. And they have a bunch of brands owned by their company, right? It's not like the salespeople are just doing distribution and they've got loads of different companies, so they don't really care. They go with what brand they like. They had Hendrix breathing down their neck saying, hey guys, we want you to do the Hendrix, whatever it is, right? So Hendrix are telling them to sell this thing. They're telling them to sell teacup martinis. Mm-hmm. And if they take a teacup martini, each account has 50 pounds that the salesperson can spend on them. If it costs 40 pounds for one Hendrix teacup, that means the salesperson can give that account one Hendrix teacup, right? But that's all they've got the budget to give them, unless that account gives them a menu or sells tons of Hendrix. Then they can give them more, right? I wanted something that cost nothing to give away, so I could give it away freely. I wanted to create a buzz around it so that the salesperson wouldn't be the one trying to give it to someone. The person in the bar would be asking the salesperson for it, right? And then I wanted to make it so that accounts that didn't already have Monkey, if they wanted Monkey, they want a spoon. That's all they care about. They want a spoon, and then they call and they're like, how do I get a spoon? Well, you can't buy them, you get them for free. The amount of people that tried to buy a spoon was insane. You get them for free. What? But you need to be an account. So they'd buy Monkey Shoulder just to get a spoon. And that was the reason. I wanted the salespeople to have something of value that they could give to an account, but give easily to account. Yeah. It wouldn't be the one thing they could give them. They could give them the Hendrix teacup and 3 spoons. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was my idea. And when you explain that to a brand manager, they get it, because they now have a conversation. It wasn't about, I'm going to spend money on that video. We didn't have the budget to do that video. It was a flat no to do the video. So I went to a friend's house, shot a video with a white background. And did you ever see the Jonathan Ives video?
Yeah.
That video was shot with 0 budget. And then I released that without permission. And they were like, you can't have that video. Oh, we're going to get sued by Apple. It's not, you can't call it ice spoon. And I was like, all right, well, let's make a real video. So I kind of like, I basically was willing to get fired for everything that I did. And you could see it because I had separate accounts to Monkey Shoulder in case legally I didn't know whether we were allowed to do some stuff. If I did it and we weren't allowed to do it and we got in trouble, I was willing to be fired for it. So I took risks on behalf of the company, which I should not have done. And now, knowing as much as I do, I probably wouldn't do it again. So I'd have to hire someone young that thinks like I do.
Do you think the Monkey Show would be where it was without you doing what you did?
I don't know if it would be around. And I'm not going to try to take credit for Monkey Shoulder. It's sold largely in supermarkets and stuff because of deals that were done by commercial teams and brand managers and stuff like that. But I think that changing people's phones in the company and being excited about it when no one else seemed to be too concerned about it. Had I not been there and Chris Rigby left and Tom Wade, which were the only other two people working full time on Monkey Shoulder, there would have been no one to bang the drum. So, there's a lot of products that probably could be doing really well right now that haven't made it because people didn't have the energy to keep banging the drum, And we were fortunate that William Grant's are amazing at like taking chances. They hired me. They took a huge chance. So yeah, we were really lucky that they took the chance, And like when it got to America, like that was it. Yeah. Once it hit America, we couldn't get it into America for so long. It was even voted the most smuggled spirit into America. Did you know that?
No.
Like, yeah, it was the most smuggled, the number one thing to smuggle into the US. We created a huge buzz in the US. And like, if it wasn't for Charlotte Voicey putting in a good word, I don't know how whether it would have been as good. Like, and France, Tim and the team in France, it took off in France. Like, France outnumbered the sales in the UK like 3-1 for a while. And like, France was the biggest market in the world for a long time. And it was all in supermarkets, being sold to people at home. And they were taking the marketing money that they were meant to spend promoting the brand, discounting it. But it meant that we were able to make volume of it. And then we sold it for real prices elsewhere. And then gray stock as well. There's so much going on with Monkey Shoulder. It was such an underground thing that it's hard to tell what would have happened, but certainly it would have been canned had it not been for a couple of people in the office banging the drum. So
all the success for Monkey Shoulder, I know you got to go. So I've got one more little thing that I want to broach: the Dean Callan Show.
Yeah.
What sort of narcissistic driver was there to name a TV show after yourself?
Oh, do you know what? Okay, do you want to know what the name is? So do you remember Perry Scott?
Yeah.
So when Perry Scott opened the Lark, right, there was a couple of very talented bartenders working with me, and I say with me, not for me, at Press Club, right? People thought I was like in charge, but really it was kind of a group of people that just got shit done. And Perry poached a couple of the staff, right? And he hired Jay Lambert, who I always considered to be just like the best drink smith. You could call him mixologist or whatever. He made the best drinks in town, right? Followed by, in my opinion, Matt Hewitt. Like, if I got drinks from either of those two people, I was always happy. Jay, always really interesting. Matt Hewitt, always on point. Like, it was like getting Dale DeGroff to make you a drink. And I have a sweet tooth, so that explains that. But the guys at the Lark were short one person. And Perry Scott went to the staff who'd all worked with me loads and said, like, right, so we've got Jay Lambert, Ryan Norrix, and a guy called Tom. Oh, God. I can't remember his surname right now. But he's not going to be watching this, so it doesn't matter. He's a real estate agent now. But Tom Kralakis. Tom Kralakis was like my protege. I met him on Hamilton Island. He was working with me. He was a glassy that wanted to bartend, and he got real shitty when I wouldn't let him bartend. And then I trained him, and he came to work with me at Press Club. And he was like easily one of the best bartenders at Press Club. He was really handsome, like really focused, didn't drink on shift or anything, banged out amazing drinks, got really good at what he did, and then became a real estate agent, made tons of money. Perry Scott had hired those 3 guys. Those guys told me that when Perry said we need one more person, like we need another person to round out the team, they all said, hire Dean Callan, then we'll have like this wicked team. And Perry Scott turned around to them and said, no fucking way am I hiring Dean Callan. Like, this is my bar. This is the Perry Scott show. If I bring Dean Callan in here, then Dean will be like the loudest voice in the whole place. And then it'll become the Dean Callan show, right? And when they told me, like, they were like, oh, fucking Dean Callan show this. Like, he's basically convinced that if you come work there, people will think it's your bar, you know? And like, they did think that of Press Club. So that's where the Dean Callan show comes from. And if I go work, the idea is if I go work somewhere, I'm a Vegemite kind of character. You either love me or hate me. And that Dean Callan show thing, I can't not be gregarious and loud and emotional and passionate and geeky and, you know, Dean. Like, that's the kind of Dean Callan show comes with the territory. So the idea of the show was I'm just going to do things my way and learn on camera how to put a show together, which you're seeing now, especially a live one. It's much harder. And the idea of the show was I'm going to keep doing these videos. And when I eventually open a bar, if, say, for example, you had a young kid in Canada coming up through the ranks, wants to go to London, and they want to work in a bar, and you know me, right? You'll say, Dean, like, is there a spot for this kid? The guy can go back on YouTube and watch back all the videos and have an idea of whether he wants to work next to this nut job. Do you know what I mean? Like,
how long have you been doing it for?
What's that?
How long have you been doing it for?
The show?
Yeah.
Like 2 years, 3 years maybe.
Wow.
But I was doing it. I did the original idea of building a studio that was a bar was, it sounds crazy, but maybe 2014, I had the idea that YouTube was moving in a direction where we could afford to play on YouTube without spending a lot of money as a brand on Monkey Shoulder. And if we age gate YouTube, so it's 18 plus that can watch our videos, we don't have to worry about kids. But if we're targeting 25-year-olds, right? And when they're 18, they learn about booze from us. It might take a couple of years, but our target demographic then, after a couple of years, is trained by us on how drinking works, right? And there might only be a couple of people that start like that. So I plan to build a cabin in the woods on the property at the back of Balvenie, between Balvenie, Glenfiddich, and Canimby, right? Which people still think that those are the malts that go in, but it's become a lot more complicated in that sense because it got really big. But basically, there's a bit of forest, and they own the property, and it's beautiful pine forest. It's amazing. And the idea was to put a cabin in the center of all of that, and then outside it, put an eco toilet or two, and then a couple of little bits of areas where, like, log seating where we could sit. And the first year, we'd go up in the summer and do a camp monkey. And there'd be a couple of little tents. And each year, we'd build 1 or 2 permanent yurts until we had basically an Ewok village with little tree things. And, like, I would then pay for my own cabin, the same proportion, and Monkey Shoulder would fit the inside out to look exactly like the inside of the cultural home that is the cabin in the woods. So then every time I do, here's how to make a Morning Glory Fizz, it's from the video studio version of the cabin up there, but I turn the cameras on, I turn the lights on, and I do it on weeks where I need a week at home rather than travel. And I just bang out a few videos, send them off to an editor, they edit them, make them look slick, and then those come out over the course of a few weeks, and then we come back and we do more videos. And if I traveled and I found cocktails that were amazing in different countries, I'd bring those recipes back, and I'd be like, I was in Vancouver recently, I met a good old friend, Shawn Soole, and he introduce me to this cocktail. It's delicious. Let me show you how it's made. And then I'd credit the person who invented it. And if you'd invented a drink, but you kind of made it for me, it wasn't on a list, but now it's suddenly on YouTube with like search engine optimization put against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You own that drink now. It's kind of like a copyright. So my idea was to then also take cameras into bars and video some bartenders while they were in there. My boss told me, we're not building you a TV studio in your back garden, Dean. We're not building you a bar in your garden. So she canned that idea, canned the cabin in the woods. They did like it, so they upgraded because my next idea was to upgrade the accommodation so that there was a bar. They did that for other brands up there, but not Monkey Shoulder, unfortunately. But I could envision what it would be like to have a studio with a bar. And I was so sold on it that as soon as I had a good enough credit rating, once I bought a house, I just put a loan. I still haven't paid off the loan. I got a loan out. I still pay £300 a month off the cabin and all the kit because I've extended it to buy all this extra gadgets. But I just got a loan out and built the whole thing. I built it all myself. The outside I got some help with, but I extended it, a whole bunch of other stuff. So yeah, and it's built to my, next time I'm going to do it different, but it's built exactly to my proportions. Did you know that?
Your height?
No, watch this. So if I go this angle, right, see here.
Oh, wow.
Right, watch this. If I put my knuckles down there, right, and I leave them there, when I turn around, I can grab a bottle off the back bar because it's exactly my grip proportion, right? So I can grab a bottle and then pour and grab another bottle and then pour and grab a glass and then bang, right? So that's the idea of that. And then if you look at this, when I put my arms out, this part is where my knuckles end and that is where my knuckles end. So my arms are exactly that width. And then if I go out to the edge of the bar, my knuckles touch the edge of the bar, and where I can't reach a glass, I've cut the bar off. So it's actually exactly proportioned to my arms. And putting my hand out, I can touch those taps to get, like, this is Aperol Spritz on tap, that's Negroni on tap, because they're the two biggest sellers we've got. Well, I don't sell, no one's ever paid for a drink. And then that's reverse osmosis. Well, there's a few carbon filters, reverse osmosis, and then a filter that puts the minerals back in so it's safe for consumption, but pure soft water. And then here, literally the bottles end where my reach ends. So everything, even the ice well, if you watch this, like listen, like I can touch the bottom of the ice well without dropping my shoulder at all. It's exactly where my knuckles hit. So everything is there. And then we had to lower the ceiling because you can't go higher than 2.5 meters. So I chopped the top of the ceiling off. But you can't go higher than 2.5 meters without planning permission. So it means that I can, without moving, reach the glasses at the top. And I created, racked stemware?
Yeah.
I created a stemware rack where when the glass gets to the end, traditionally the glass gets to the end and it stops, right?
Yeah.
And then to take it off, you have to go backwards. I've built one where it goes like that, and then the wire comes out and around, so you can actually go from there up and off to the front without the next one clicking off. The next one locks into that last space with the idea that if I ever build a bar the way I want it, my dream bar would have a dispense section with all of those glasses up like that you can just go boom, 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 boom. And then instead of having customers there, you have screens with all the drinks that are touch screens and social media, and then a cold pass. So when the drinks are all built, you can put that into a freezer plate, and it keeps the drink cold until the server, who's on the other side, pulls the cold drink out. Like a hot pass in a kitchen, keeps the plates warm. And then behind here in the dispense would be floor to ceiling freezers with glassware. So the idea was I build this the way I would have my dispense / show bar in my actual bar, and then play with it. But as I've had nowhere near the drive or funds to build the dream bar that I want. Like I've also got like these things. Have you seen this? Oh, that's right. I changed the number. So like I've got all these different lights that do different things. So there's a disco ball light, which is now aimed here, but I can change where that aims so that it lights up like the Fortaleza. So nice. If I was to like, today we're going to be making drinks with Fortaleza, I can like press the button and Fortaleza would light up. It's pretty cool. I've had some fun in here.
Well, dude, thank you so much for your time. I could literally talk to you for like another hour for sure. But I want to thank
Sorry about the ranting. We like, if you ever want to do it again, we could pick up and have a set topic rather than just like a massive origin story.
Fuck set topics. Set topics for, but when travel and everything gets done, I want to make a trip to London and come and hang out.
Yeah, definitely. Because now I know this looks ridiculous, but all these angles, they're not supposed to all be me. They're supposed to be the guests. They're supposed to be other people sitting here, right? I've been tempted to make it so that my little Star Wars characters, which I had yesterday, I was thinking about it. I was like, what if I just had an extreme close-up on the Star Wars characters and just cut to them and was chatting to them all the time? But I didn't want people to think I'd gone full like Wilson on the like lock-in thing.
Just gone beautiful mind on everybody.
Yeah. Well, I need to practice it. I do need to practice live cutting. So because obviously if you're having a chat with someone and you're facing this way and then they start speaking, I need to know to do that when they start speaking and then go back to me again.
You need to get an assistant.
I'm just going to practice this stuff first.
You need to get a mini Dean.
A 2IC. That's what I've been thinking. I need to get a 2IC.
Yeah, you do.
Anyway,
hi, buddy.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks,
what is that? Oh.
I'm going to chat to you really soon, okay?
Yeah. Cheers, man.
Hey, brother. Thank you.
And have a nice day since it's so early.
Yeah. Have a good evening.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.